Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD News. Former President Trump is now suing his ex-lawyer Michael Cohen for more than $500 million. The suit, reported by Fox, was filed today in Florida. It alleges that Cohen breached his attorney-client relationship by spreading falsehoods about Trump, along with other allegations. The lawsuit says that Trump has, quote, suffered vast reputational harm as a direct result of Cohen's breaches. And former President Trump has finally spoken out after being charged with 34 felony counts last week over alleged campaign finance violations. He told Tucker Carlson he's not going anywhere.
Is there anything they could throw at you legally that would convince you to drop out of the race? If you get convicted in this case in New York,
no, I'd never drop out. No, I'd never drop. It's not my thing. I wouldn't do it.
Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg requested a restraining order against Republican Congressman Jim Jordan, chair of the House Judiciary Committee. Bragg was trying to stop Jordan from subpoenaing a former deputy of Bragg to testify. But a federal judge turned down Bragg's request for the restraining order. And in a separate case, the former president is headed back to New York City for the second time for a deposition on a civil case. This one is led by New York Attorney General Letitia James. She accuses the Trump Organization of making falsified financial statements to get loans. And next, we have some analysis on former President Trump's indictment. Congressman Greg Steube of Florida explores the legal background of the indictment and offers his thoughts on what will be happening next. Here's a look at his conversation with NTD's Steve Lance.
Congressman Greg Steube, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Congressman, I want to get your thoughts as you were watching the day unfold where former President Trump was hauled into the courtroom and processed and arraigned. What was going through your mind?
I would say the biggest would be frustration. That obviously leads to anger, because this wouldn't be happening if he wasn't running for president again. It wouldn't be happening if he wasn't so vilified and hated by the left. And then you put your legal hat on. So I'm also a lawyer, and I actually litigated cases. I was a prosecutor in the JAG Corps. And so you start to, one of the first frustrating things was you don't even have the plain language of the indictment. And then you start reading the language of the indictment, and there's so many legal questions here. It's in violation of statute of limitations. Like, I would never bring a case that was beyond the statute of limitations. They have that issue. They have a Sixth Amendment issue as it relates to not putting the underlying facts and the underlying crime. They're trying to really thread a needle through an election interference, an election FEC violation, but they're using the state court to do it under a business records misdemeanors, which they trumped up the misdemeanors to a felony. I mean, there's just so many legal issues with this case, and it is 100% politically motivated, which is what's frustrating. We have lost the justice system in our country, where you have a Biden administration that has weaponized the justice system, and I'm very honored to serve on the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government, because there needs to be an abundance of attention while we're in the majority in the House to do investigations, to do oversight, to do hearings, to put people under oath and ask those tough questions, because our justice system has been weaponized for the left.
So let me ask you, Congressman, what role can Congress play in handling the indictment, and what powers does Congress have to act?
The first is what we've done in starting to bring in and subpoena people in Alvin Bragg's office. It was a former district attorney that we're bringing in, and what's even interesting with that is this guy wrote a book about all the things that have happened, and said that Alvin Bragg initially didn't want to bring charges against Trump because there wasn't a legal basis to do that. Now suddenly that is all happening. So we want to bring that individual in and talk to him. He doesn't work for the district attorney's office anymore. And now Alvin Bragg has filed a lawsuit against Jim Jordan in our committee to prevent us from talking to an individual that used to work with him. I think that's very interesting that you would go to that level in depths of legal maneuvering to try to prevent someone from being subpoenaed to a committee of Congress that has oversight on these issues from testifying. What do you have to hide? If there's nothing going on, if there's nothing to hide, if everything is above board, then why wouldn't you want us to talk to him?
So, Congressman, over the past, several months, actually years now, we've seen, Trump impeached. We've seen his allies, his cabinet members, General Flynn, even members of Congress, Scott Perry, phone confiscated. Now we see Jim Jordan. Where does this ultimately end? And are you personally concerned that you could be next?
I think all of us, and there was a great article, I can't remember who wrote it, but there was a great article about the moment all of those people were appointed to that committee, you're going to be surveilled by the Democratic intelligence apparatus that is Joe Biden's White House and FBI and DOJ. And I'm not personally concerned because I feel very comfortable about what I've said and what I've done and where I stand on these issues. But it is deeply concerning when you have a member of Congress whose cell phone was confiscated, the allegations that have been made with no basis in evidence or in law. Is, again, they're using and weaponizing the DOJ and the FBI and the justice system against their political opponents. And hopefully in 2024, America will elect a Republican and we can right some of these issues. But until then, you're going to have a lot of members who are going to face those challenges. And hopefully through the weaponization subcommittee, we can bring a lot of this to the American people's forefront.
Congressman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's another addition to the list of potential 2024 presidential candidates, Senator Tim Scott. Here's a video he just released which previews the style he'll likely take in a campaign. Take a look.
I know America is a land of opportunity, not a land of oppression. I know it because I've lived it. That's why it pains my soul to see the Biden liberals attacking every rung of the ladder that helped me climb.
The GOP senator has shied away from jumping in the race officially. Instead, he's launching a presidential exploratory committee that allows him to raise money, which could then be transferred to an official presidential campaign. Continuing his Faith in America tour, the South Carolina Republican was in Iowa today, and he's scheduled to hold an event in New Hampshire later this week. Scott gained national prominence in 2021 for delivering the GOP response to President Biden's address to a joint session of Congress. And inflation is slowly easing, but Americans could feel the pinch in their pocketbooks for a while longer. NTD's Iris Tao has more on the latest inflation report, as well as President Biden's visit to Northern Ireland.
Prices are easing for Americans as inflation last month slowed to the lowest level in nearly 2 years. According to the latest CPI report, prices rose 5% in March compared to the same time last year. But although that marks the smallest increase since May 2021, it's still well above the 2% target set by the Federal Reserve. And consumers can continue to feel the pain as food and rent prices remain high and continue to drive inflation. Meanwhile, President Biden touts the latest numbers, saying in a statement, while inflation is still too high, this progress means more breathing room for hardworking Americans. Biden is in Northern Ireland on Wednesday to commemorate the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which brought peace to the region after 30 years of unrest.
The Good Friday Agreement showed us that there is hope for repair, even in the most awful breakages. And may God bring you the peace we need.
And Biden also urges leaders of Northern Ireland to seize economic opportunities with the U.S.
Scores of major American corporations wanting to come here, wanting to invest.
Biden on Wednesday also met with the current UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in Belfast. And next up, Biden, who often highlights his Irish heritage, will be in the Republic of Ireland through Saturday to meet with officials as well as his distant relatives. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And the White House this week taking multiple measures to tackle the opioid crisis. Are officials using the right methods? NTD's Arian Pazdar spoke with an expert who used to work on the front lines in the fight against illegal drugs. A warning, we will show you medical symptoms which some viewers may find disturbing.
Xylazine, or Tranq, is a tranquilizer designed to be used on animals. Drug dealers lace their products with xylazine to cut costs, often with fatal outcomes. On Wednesday morning, the White House announced it designates fentanyl combined with xylazine as an emerging threat to the United States. ABC Chicago reported on the drug's scary flesh-eating effect,
leaving some with horrific, hard-to-heal wounds that can lead to amputation.
The black dots, that's necrotic flesh. This actually looks phenomenal.
Just like fentanyl, xylazine is not illegal since it's used medically.
You don't have to completely outlaw the drug or make it illegal, but you can definitely put certain wording in there in the law to where how it's used.
Victor Avila is a former supervisory special agent for ICE and Homeland Security. He's also author of the book Agent Under Fire. On Tuesday, the White House announced how it plans to crack down on the global fentanyl supply chain. One of the main methods is to restrict drug traffickers' access to the U.S. financial system. The fact sheet also states that the U.S. will improve tracking of pill presses, increase seizures of cash being smuggled at the southwest border, and better track equipment used to produce illicit fentanyl.
What do you think about the fact sheet provided by the White House, and what stands out to you the most?
Well, I reviewed it, and the first thing that stands out is the lack of accountability that the administration is holding on Mexico and China. We know that the cartels are headquartered in Mexico, but they're present everywhere in the United States. And so we need to attack these cartels at the source.
He says the U.S. can hold Mexico accountable by placing sanctions on the country. Avila added the government should declare cartels terrorist organizations so it can freeze their assets in the U.S. and drastically ramp up security at official border crossings, since that's where most drugs come into the U.S., he says. Ariane Pastar, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.